Oh my
Ding
God.
dog a ding
Oh, we're
dog a
live.
ding dog
We're
a
live.
ding dog. Now we're live. Ding dog a ding dog a ding. Bow ba doom bow ba dum bam ba dum ba ga dum bow.
One, two,
There we
one,
go.
two, hit it, boys.
Get it, boys. Get it,
Fantastic.
boys.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Drummers Education Connection. I am Bart Robley, and I am with my buddy Jeremy Steinkohler. I am with Rick Stojak, and I am with Chip Ritter. And
Woo.
Jeremy and I have chosen to use backgrounds of ourself. Jeremy is a background of him playing the drums, and there's a background of me in front of me playing the drums. So that's kind of different, right?
It's the man with two heads.
The man, I do. Look,
Because you're right on your shoulder.
I have a mini me on my shoulder. Anyway, hey guys, for those of you who tuning in and wanted to see Dusty today, Dusty's an amazing drummer, a dear, dear friend of mine, and just the salt of the earth. And so is his wife, Ricky. Ricky Watson is an amazing drummer. We want to get her on the show. Unfortunately, I got a phone call yesterday morning, and Ricky's father, Dusty's father-in-law, passed away. And so our deepest condolences go out to him and Ricky. And we will get him on the show shortly. He had to take off literally at a last minute's notice, and they took off to Colorado. And so, again, our deepest condolences go out to him and Ricky, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. So that's what's happening there. So if all of the drumming community would keep Ricky and Dusty in their thoughts and prayers, I know that they would really appreciate that. So anyway, so what we decided to do was shoot from the hip, and we didn't really have time to upload new artwork and all that sort of stuff. So what we decided to do is rather than cancel the show today, is we would kick Jeremy Steinkohler off of the show.
Technology.
Technology.
Yeah, there he is.
So
he's
he's
coming
back.
There he is.
There he is. So anyway, we decided we're going to shoot from the hip, and we are going to talk about questions from our students part 2. Now, this was something that we did actually a few weeks ago, where we had this kind of the same situation. We're having some technology issues with one of our guests, Tony Pia, who's also going to be back on. But we decided to finish up answering some questions that our students had put together to ask all of the drummers out there, ourselves, and people out there watching. So, and this was a fantastic idea brought to us by our friend down in San Diego, Rick Stojak.
Yeah.
So, Rick, we're going to let you kick it off, I think, with the first question to the four of us here on deck and to the people watching, and to get their opinions and answers to our questions.
All right. Okay. So, Bart, that was a beautiful introduction, by the way.
Thank you.
You're so good on camera, man.
So. I got a face for radio, though.
Yeah. All right. This is cool because this is sort of like if you are coming in for a drum lesson, you can ask one teacher, but if you ask a question that's up on the deck, it's getting the answer from 4 different teachers.
And from the people online.
And the online, yeah. So anybody online watching us on our Facebook or YouTube, feel free to ask a question or answer a question too. So,
yes. Man, Jeremy's having some problems today.
Oh, man.
We're tired of him anyway.
Internet
we're tired of him
in San Francisco.
I know, right?
Oh, man. All right. So one of the questions I get asked often, and I'd love to get your opinions on it, and then I'll share mine, is when can I start playing double bass?
Good question. Chip, you're a double bass king. I play double bass. Yeah. We all play double bass, but you're the king of double bass. So let's throw that to you.
All right. When can I play double bass? As a student who's asking me that question, well, of course, you can play it right now if you want to. I mean, if you have a double pedal and you want to mess around with it, there's no timeline there's no legal limit that's been established by the official association of drummers, yes. But I would say after you learn how to use the hi-hat, open and closing, and playing jazz swings and things like that. I think after you've got a good facility of your left foot on the hi-hat, then you can start getting into double bass. That would be my short answer.
I like
Yeah.
that. So build up a little bit of coordination
Yeah.
first, four-way, get some
Yeah.
general four-way coordination, and then go for it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
start doing everything that you do with your right foot with your left foot.
There you go. Hey, he's
Yeah.
back.
Jeremy's
Hey,
back.
sorry guys. You know, it's this technology that we've been anointed with that sometimes
Oh!
just doesn't cooperate.
Man, Jeremy's
Yeah.
stealing Chip's
That's
material today,
okay.
bud.
That's okay.
I
Man,
had to. It was a rough one. I don't know what happened there. I just got kicked out, and my internet was going wonky. And here I am. Anyways, I'm back. What do you guys? What nuggets?
Okay,
of wisdom
so
have you
go ahead.
laid
Then you
down
answer the
for
question. You answer the question now. Then go ahead. What's your answer?
or Jeremy, I don't think you heard the question.
I'm joking.
Oh. Uh-oh, is he gone again?
Yeah, he's having trouble. So anyway,
All right,
so
Bart, what
Chip,
about you? What about you with bass, double bass?
you know, I agree with Chip. I think that you know, yeah, you can start into double bass right away. I mean,
Yep.
you know, there's no drumming police that are going to arrest you. However, I do believe that that, like Chip said, I think there should be some four-way coordination. I personally believe that the left foot on the hi-hat is probably like one of the most important things that we have, because that's where we hold our pulse, you know,
Right,
and we drive the band with. The band will usually, good band members listen to the hi-hat and really lock in. So I think that four-way coordination, just being able to hold a quarter note or a 2 and 4 on your hat, is super important. And then from there, once you're able to hold on to the 2 and 4, and you can understand some, you know, basic subdivisions of eighth notes and 16th notes, and you can usually jump in and start playing some, you know, double bass and kind of, you know, exploring that. But and when you're playing double bass, you don't want to just play eighth notes or 16th notes. You're going to want to be able to play, you know, some eighth note triplets, some sextuplets, you know, understand different subdivisions there. What about you? What about, hey there,
Well,
Jeremy, you're looking good now. Whatever you
you're
did,
on.
it's much sharper.
He
So
paid
what
the
about
bill.
you, to your own question? What about you? When do you tell them they can start playing double bass?
You know, when you have the passion for it, for starters, you know, if it's going to add practice time to you, to your playing, because you're just so stoked to start playing double bass, then get that double pedal right away. And don't worry about this. Well, maybe I should master my right foot first. You're going to spend your whole life trying to master your right foot. So you
That's the truth.
might as well get started with double bass if you're into it. And I also remind people that just because it's double bass, it doesn't mean that you're playing extreme metal. That double bass can be applied to lots of different styles. You know, I like
Hey,
a lot of electronic music. You know, like there's things that are done in electronic music on the kick that you just couldn't do with one foot. So might as well get started. And then I wouldn't compromise the quality of the pedal. Like if you've got a good right foot pedal, you know, let's say you've got, I'll pick a DW 9000. Okay. You don't want to throw single pedal. You don't want to get rid of that and then start practicing all the time on like a really cheap double bass drum pedal.
oh yeah.
So, right. Cause then your right foot might start suffering. So, don't just use a junky double bass drum pedal. So,
Jeremy,
are
what
you
about
there?
you? Are you there?
Am I here? I think I'm here.
You are there. Okay, so the question was, Rick, ask Jeremy the question. I don't think he heard it.
Okay, a student question that I get often is, when can I start playing double bass? So what's your take, Jeremy?
As soon as you buy a pedal, right?
Yeah.
Is the short answer. But
there it is.
I mean, I'm not. I do have a couple of students who play double bass. I have a double bass kick pedal in my studio, but I don't play it very well. So, you know, I'm not the authority on double bass playing.
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, you know, generally, I don't even start mentioning it as a possibility until they're sort of into at least some, you know, I kind of feel like there's bigger fish to fry in the beginning, you know, like get ready, get playing music, playing the kind of stuff you want to do. Most people don't come in wanting to play double bass right off the bat. It's something that they evolve into because it's the style of music they want to play, you know, incorporates it, or it's something they're curious about. So it's not something I usually introduce very early, but I do have a couple of students working on it.
That's so great. And I know you've got your student who's the Gene Hoglan protege.
Yeah. Oh man, he was into double bass from like
Max?
6 years old, and there was
Max,
no
right?
back. Yeah, Max. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
into double bass from a very early age and playing heavy metal stuff.
Yeah.
And he can just fly with those doubles. It's just insane.
That's so
Yeah.
great. That's so great. All right. So what about one of you guys? One of you guys have a question from students?
I got a good question I keep getting a lot.
Okay.
Is how do I play drum fills? I get that one a lot. And how do I learn new drum fills? You know? And what I get them to do is to try to play a couple bars of a couple measures of a beat and then do a fill and try to just repeat that. And every time we do a fill, you've got to do something different no matter what. You can do anything you want, but it's got to be different than the one you did before. How do you guys deal with that?
Rick, go with it. I saw you grabbed your book.
Well, you know, I got an answer. I mean, it's the same shameless plug, but to answer your
Nice.
question, I wrote a book. And there's over 2,000 drum fills in this book. So
Wow.
it's in the How to Build a Drum Groove series, Mastering Drum Fills. So I've got every rhythm under the sun, and I have a short fill, like a 1-beat fill, and then a 2-beat fill on each rhythm, and then like a 4-beat fill on each rhythm.
Nice.
And then we mix it up, and that's it. Yeah, so stuff like that. So
Fantastic.
yeah,
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
So I like to think of playing fills as like an art science. You know, there's the art part to it and there's the science part to it. And so when I'm first introducing the concept, you know, we start working on just gaining some rhythmic vocabulary with 16th note syncopation. So we'll take all the different ways you can derive a rhythm out of 4 16th notes. And there's 15 different possible rhythmic combinations by leaving one or more of those notes out. And we'll plug those in on the 4th beat of the measure. So I'll play a simple rock beat for 3 beats. And then on the 4th beat, you know, 4 E and a, 4 E and, 4 and a, 4 E, all the different permutations. And then we'll work all the 2-beat combinations of every one of those with every other one. So there's like 225 different possible 2-beat sequences of 16th note rhythms. And by the time they're done with those, they really got a good handle on 16th. And then we start moving around the kit and we start working on the orchestration. So we'll take, let's say 2 beats of 16th notes and work it around the kit, 35 different ways, keeping the sticking the same, not even working on changing the sticking yet. At the same time, we're working on accents and flams and ways you can ornament and make your fills a little more interesting. So this is like, to me, that's like the science part. Like you're just working on the mechanics, the orchestration, the sticking, and the rhythm, rhythm being most important, right? Just getting your timing. Because drummers, as we know, tend to rush their fills. Why? Because they get anxious. Because here comes the fill, a little bit of adrenaline rush, you start shortening your gaps between your notes. So the gaps are the most important thing, right? Once they've got a pretty decent handle, my students, on sort of fill mechanics and fill vocabulary, and we'll do the same thing with triplets in a shuffle context too, in jazz. Then what I'll start doing is I have these loops that I've created where I've taken like 4 bars of a song and just spliced it and looped it, and lined it up so it loops in time over and over.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And at the end of the 4th bar, there's a fill in the song, and it's all different stuff from super simple 1-beat fills to a 2-beat break to like a full measure, and stuff that's like really straightforward and simple, from Beatles stuff and Rolling Stones to some much more sophisticated and syncopated stuff and funk. And then I'll just have them practice with these loops, and like you were talking about, Chip, have them try a different fill every time and experiment with what works in a given situation. To me, that's sort of the art part, where you're like, your fill has to meet the moment, right? Mm-hmm. Where's the music coming from and where's it going to? Is your fill ramping it up? Is it chilling it out? How syncopated is your fill compared to the groove it's coming from? Sort of the moment musically. So that's my take on fills.
That was a way better answer than my answer.
No, man, your answer was great.
It's the same concept. It's the same.
Yeah, it's same thing. Yeah. And I kind of agree with you, Jeremy. I think there's and Chip, because this will tie, I think, both of you guys together. I think there is the music part of it and the art part of it. I think a fill has to be musical. If you're playing you know, if you're playing Bob Marley tunes, you're not going to play, you know, a Neil Peart drum fill. You have to play something that fits the song. And what I always say is we want to remember that fills, you know, they're kind of setups. If you think like old school jazz stuff, it's set, you're letting the band know, hey, we're going here. You're, you know, and you do have to learn to really help, you know, keep time together and keep that whole thing happening so you don't rush the fill, like you said. And I think that there's two different ways to think about it. Last night, as a matter of fact, I was working with a student, and she's getting ready to play "Take It Easy," the Eagles tune, right?
Yeah.
And what happened in that tune, if you look at the, I have a really good transcription of it. Uh, Don Henley played it like a drum fill, really simple. It's 3/8 notes and 4 and, right? Da 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 crash, da 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 1, and he goes back into the groove. But the first time he does it, it's snare tom tom. The second time he does it, it's snare snare snare. The next time he does it, it's simultaneously floor tom and snare drum and 4 and. The fourth time that he does it, it's the same thing, but he puts the kick drum underneath it to build up the and 4 and. And so what he did is he took one drum fill, he took one thought, he played it 3 different ways. And at first, when listening to it, you think he played or 4 different ways. You think he played 4 different drum fills, but he didn't. He played the same thing. He just said it differently each time. I think that stuff like that is brilliant. Not necessarily that it's the most, you know, chop suey, crazy drum calisthenics thing in the world to do, but it works really, really, really well. And then you can take a song like, for instance, if you look at Inside Out, okay, the Phil Collins tune from the album No Jacket Required, there's some fills in there that he does that are really interesting because he'll start the fill, and this is the science part of it, okay? He'll start a drum fill on beat 3, but then he'll break the bar line in the fill and in the fill on beat 3 in the next measure, right? So he does it, you know, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and he goes back into the groove on 3 and 4 and.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting about that is when you listen to it, that's the artistic part, because he didn't come up with this mathematical equation of, okay, here's how I'm going to do this fill. He's listening to the horn players, he's listening to what the guitar player is doing, and he's playing along with them. He's enhancing what they're doing. So it's not necessarily the setup that I was speaking about before, you know. So that goes into both of what you were saying, Jeremy, and the artistic and the mathematical part. But then Chip, it's the same thing that you were saying. You know, the Don Henley one, he played the same thing, but he played it different every time. Maybe he didn't play something different, but he played it differently, saying something different every time. And I think that's kind of brilliant to do something like that. I wish I would have thought of it. Well, Rick, it's your question. How did you, I mean, I know you use your book, but what else do you say? I mean, what do you say about here's how you get into it?
Well, it was Chip's question.
Oh, it's Chip's. I'm sorry. My bad.
It was Chip's question, but that's okay. One of the things that I do is just the kind of like what Jeremy's talking about, kind of going over all of the different patterns that are out there and then really work on voicing them around the kit and being really, really creative. So going back to your Don Henley thing with that and 4 and, you know, that's the perfect fill for the song.
Right.
So, you know, it's, you know, I really like to emphasize that to students. So he did the perfect fill. So why change it, right? Other than
Right.
and then other than just making a little bit different voicing. So one of the other things I'll do is YouTube is just full of drumless drum tracks. There's tons of stations on YouTube that have that. And so I do a lot of practicing along to loops and a lot of my electronic percussion, and then really try to get people to be creative and you know, and sometimes well, if we're just working on a fill or a pattern, they might go, oh, that's the perfect fill. But always keep in mind it's relative to the song that you're playing.
Yeah.
Yep.
that's part of why I think it's so important to learn songs and learn fills from songs, because you don't just
Yeah.
learn the patterns. You're learning that it's like why you're learning the instinct of why the drummer chose to play that fill in that moment, and you're
Yeah.
like copying, good practice, like good practices of like fill fitting the moment.
Right.
I mean, on its most fundamental level, a fill creates rhythmic tension. That's what it does, right?
Right.
And it
Yeah.
does it to a different degree. Sometimes it can be like just the slightest bit and it's like, oh, here we go.
Yep.
And other times it can be super syncopated and, Dave Garibaldi linear Tower of Power fill that's like, oh man, like super tense, and then bam, the release, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about playing with that degree of tension and what meets the moment in the song and what the song is sort of asking for in that moment. And even in the same song, you can have fills that do that to different extent, right? Here's the big fill that goes into the big shout chorus. That one's going to be really, really fat and muscular and syncopated or whatever. And then the one that's just going back to the verse after the chorus, well, that's not going to have that same quality. So, there's I think it's important sort of piece of the puzzle to recognize why, this is kind of a related question. Some of my students ask me, when do you play fills, right? And for us, that's kind of obvious. Well, transitions, right? When something's going from one thing to the next. But why? What happens at the transition? Well, there's harmonic tension, right? What's the matter?
You hung up. You cut out.
Oh, what did you miss?
The last word that we heard was transition. You said, what happens at the transition? We're like, what happens? What happens?
So there's some kind of other tension going on in the music, right? There's harmonic tension, maybe from one chord change going to another, or there's melodic tension. And what we're creating is rhythmic tension to complement that harmonic or melodic tension. Or sometimes, it's just we're creating it all on our own just to mark 4 bars or whatever. But that's what's happening, and that's where the art part comes in, is like how tense are you trying to make it, and then bam, the release when you hit that crash, right? Music is full of tension and release. This is one of the things that makes it interesting to listen to, and so that's part of what fills do, especially, is like highlight those moments when you get to really be creative.
And we love our fills, but don't forget the rest.
My drum teacher, my band teacher in high school always used to tell the percussion section to practice our rests.
Yeah. I've had a few teachers tell me that too.
All right. So, Jeremy, your turn. Do you have a question?
I do. I have a great question. So I was fortunate enough this past week to have 4 gigs. I haven't had 4 gigs in a week in like, I don't know, 3 years, man. It was just glory. It was just so great to play again. And I had a lesson with a student this week, and it was before the weekend. I had gigs Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and she said, I saw in your email that you sent out, you've got 3 gigs this weekend with 3 different bands. And I said, yeah, isn't that great? She said, how do you remember all that music? How do you know what to play with 3 different bands? And like, what about rehearsals and all that? I said, well, one band had 1 rehearsal, the other band had 1 rehearsal, and the third one had no rehearsals. And that just blew her mind. She couldn't fathom or understand how a drummer could know what to do in all these different situations. Must be whatever, 50 songs or more, like 60 songs. And how do you learn to play all that different material with such minimal rehearsal? That's the question.
That's a great question.
I put it to you guys first.
Chip, go.
I can jump in and say that I've got a couple bands that I've played with different music, and usually it's called preparation. It's called taking notes and doing your due diligence and going through the set material and working on your side of the things, and just being prepared and preparing yourself. Preparation and due diligence.
Yep. I'll second that. I agree 100%. Being prepared. Also, sometimes being prepared means having a transcription or a chart or notes, like Chip said, and being ready to read those. And if you're playing like a rock gig and they don't necessarily want charts on stage, or you know you're up there, you know, rocking out and they don't want to see a music stand, then have notes, maybe key notes written out on a snare drum head, or just if you have a transcription and you have to read it, put it on the floor tom, put it somewhere where you're kind of, you know, just reading it and not making it known that you're reading. And yeah, you know, practice, practice, practice. There's no substitute. There's no substitute. There's no getting around it. And then if you find yourself in a situation where you're at a gig and somebody, the band leader or something, calls out a song and you've never played it, jump in with both feet, be brave, and use your musical intuition.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if you have, I always say that if you have a little bit of knowledge, if somebody's like, hey, we're going to do this song, and I don't know how that, I've never played that song before, you know, even if you're on the bandstand, what's the feel? It's a shuffle. What's the BPM? It's right about here. Okay, here we go. And then just, and, you know, is it a full-time shuffle or halftime? You know, ask, you know, quick, pertinent questions, count in, be great, brave, and use your ears, man. Listen to what the band's doing. Listen to what they're playing. Watch the bass player. Watch the piano player. Pay attention to the singer. Are they spitting words out? Are you going too fast? Pay attention.
Yeah. Good one. Yeah.
Rick.
I say wing it, baby, wing it. No, no, seriously. You know, it's the more you do it, the easier it becomes. You really have to have a really, really good ear and be focusing, I think, more on the music and the song than listening to your drum part. We
Very
get so
much.
hung up on the drum part rather than what's just going to support the song, especially the vocalist.
Right.
So, and the more you do it, it's like a muscle that you've exercised. You just keep getting better and better and better at it.
Well
So,
said.
of course, learning to read music is huge because then you can have a chart. You know, I've got over 2,000 charts. And if I needed to pull something up, man, I'm going to read it. Look at someone like Kenny Arnoff. He reads charts all the time, you know?
All the time.
And if you don't want people saying, "Oh man," but then you're going to be looking like like you're reading music and stiff. Well, you're not going to put the chart in front of you on the kit. Put it over on an iPad on the stand on the side. And when I studied with Zorro, he was all about, man, if you want to make a living at this and do a lot of gigs, you just have to learn all of the standards. Just, you know. So if you work with a band and you just did 3 45-minute sets, keep sharp on those songs because they might come back again, and you might have to perform them again. So, and then Zora would say, of course, like what you were saying, Bart, learn your styles. And Zora has always said it's a very cool thing to do. You take a standard, let's say it's a rock song. Well, see if you can interpret that song in a reggae feel and a more funky feel and then a jazzy feel. So he's like, if you know all the standards and you know all the songs and you can play them all in any styles, you're good to go.
Right.
So
Very
what
cool.
about you, Jeremy? So what do you tell them?
Well, you know, it was interesting because on these 3 gigs, they were each a little bit different. There was one gig, it was jazz tunes and sort of bossa novas. And so we had a rehearsal because there was some weird time signature stuff and there was a bunch of arrangement stuff where we're switching feels from Latin to swing and, you know, there's a bunch of breaks. And so that was, you know, I was telling my student, you know, most of the practice or the preparation that I do for the gigs isn't even playing. It's just thinking. It's like looking at the charts, listening to the tunes, you know, because if you know it's a swing, you know, you don't have to practice your swing feel. You've done that. I've done that for, you know, 30 years, right? So it's all about knowing the arrangement hits. And once you sort of put that to memory, you know, you're good to go. And you had a chart for that. And then there was another one of the gigs that there was no charts and there was no rehearsal. And I didn't know what we were going to play until we got there. It's this monthly series at this club. The club owner, he's a piano player, and he decided to put on this sort of invitational jam thing where he invites a couple of people to join the house band, and I'm part of the house band. And I didn't know what we were going to play until he said, "Oh, let's do this," and it's kind of this feel. And he would give me the information like Bart was saying. It's you know, a funk, you know, or a funk blues or a shuffle, and he'd start playing. He would just start playing. Sometimes he wouldn't even say what it was, and he'd say, "I'm going to take one up front," and he'd take a chorus of whatever it was going to be, and I got what he was going for just from that. And I'd come in with my following my instincts, like Rick was talking about, and jump in with both feet. And you have to do it convincingly. And then the longer you play, the more you have all these different reference points, right? It's not just like, oh my God, I've never heard this kind of thing, I don't know what to do. It's like, oh no, this sounds like a million songs I've played already. Even if it's something I've never heard, it's got the same feel and the same character as this. And so I've got this reference point for, this reminds me of Beast of Burden by the Stones or whatever. And so I'm going to give it that kind of vibe. And, I think an audience member wouldn't have known, other than a little bit of communication on stage, that we hadn't rehearsed, because it sounded together and tight and like we knew what we were doing. And for the endings, there's a lot of those stuff. I expect stuff to happen. There's a lot of visual communication on stage, cueing stuff, and you get by.
I think yeah, that visual communication stuff's a big deal, and that kind of goes along with what you were saying, Rick. I mean, really be in tune with the musicians on stage, and we've all been saying that, all of us, listen and know what's going on stage, and don't get caught up in just the drum part. I always think of the drums as like almost like the ultimate support instrument. You know what I mean? The drums are, unless we get a solo, we're not a soloist. We're not the person out front going, "Hey, look at me." It's
we're like the goalies on the soccer team.
Exactly.
Like the what?
The goalies on a soccer team. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
No doubt we're here for support, and we all know our number one job is tempo. So, if you get the tempo and can keep the tempo going, that's the majority of the game anyway. It's not was the fill da 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 ba ba ba, or was it da 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 ba?
Yeah, right.
If you're grooving solid and keeping the band together, that's a big win. The band is going to love that. And so I have a lot of songs, in the book series, I have other songs and they're listed by BPM. So the tempo is important. So, it's a thing that we could find as a player is the band leader said, okay, man, play a calypso groove at 120.
Right.
And it's important to be able to reference that or have a quick metronome app. So usually you can't dial something in and, let me play 120. But I've got a lot of songs in my head, that I refer to. 100 beats a minute. Okay, I know 100 because I just the chorus in my head of something I know.
One of the things I like to do with my students on occasion, like let's say they've come in and they haven't practiced for a week, I'll totally shift gears and I'll like cue up songs that I know they haven't heard, and I'll say, okay, you got to just play. You got 20 seconds to listen to this, and then you just got to start playing and figure out on your own without any instruction from me what to do. And then we'll do that for maybe a couple minutes. I'll give them some feedback. We'll try it again, and then we'll do another song. We just keep doing rapid fire, song after song, where they're kind of going to be like in that professional situation where you're on a gig and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You don't know the tunes, and you've got to play something. And that helps them gain confidence. Like, oh, yeah, I do know how to play a shuffle. I do know how to play a 12/8 groove. I do know how to play a funk groove.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with what you just said, I mean, if you can play a rock groove, a funk groove, a shuffle, a swing feel, a 12/8, maybe a bossa nova, unless you're in a jazz band, but maybe something,
which
a
technically is a samba.
Which is technically a samba, right? Exactly. We learned that last week. If you can cover those, I mean, you can probably get through the majority gigs. You can.
Right.
Hey, I got a question. Okay, I got a question for you from one of my drum students. He wanted to know, how do you get your bass drum foot faster? And that's just if you're playing a single pedal. He's been fighting this for a long time, and he's been working really hard. So he wants to get your guys' input on how do you get your bass drum foot, your right foot, faster.
That's a great question.
I love that question.
So
Chip,
if you're playing the hi-hat and the bass drum twice and the snare drum twice, if you're going doom doom ka ka doom doom ka ka, and you do that over and over and over, you would go as fast as you can and figure out where your 100% is. Where's the max speed? And you would take that 100% and go at and start practicing then at 85 or 75% lower than your max speed, but for longer and longer and longer periods of time. I think that's probably the fastest way I can explain how I improved students' single pedal speed.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yep.
Chip just hit it on the head, really. I mean, he in like 2 sentences, he told you what you really need to know, which is the biggest mistake students make in trying to gain speed is that they practice too fast, right? You have to go below that threshold where it starts to fall apart, or even starts to get just a little bit sloppier on the edge. Because when you practice sloppy, you get good at sloppy, right? You don't want that. You want to practice clean, and the speed will come from that. It's control first, speed second, not the other way around.
Right.
And so whatever it is you're working on, whatever groove, whatever version of the thing you're trying to do, whatever exercise, find your threshold and then back off. I find that Chip was saying 85, 75%, that's great. That's super effective. I find that when you're trying to maximize the efficiency of your practice, to practice 5 to 10% below that top speed is like sort of where it's a little bit challenging, but you're hanging on and it's smooth and controlled. Also, there's a really good book I use with my students called Bass Drum Control by Colin Bailey. That's a really, really good book for getting your right foot dialed in. I've never had a student who went through that book who didn't come out the other side of it with vastly improved right foot speed and accuracy.
Yes.
Yeah. Rick, what about you?
I'm looking up a page that I have, because I have a grid system, and it has to do with starting and stopping bass drum patterns. So I'll have a back, I'll do a backbeat, eighth notes hi-hat and backbeat, 2 and 4 on snare, hit kick on 1, lock in with that. Then work on 1E, boom, boom, tat, boom, tat, boom, boom, tat. The 1E end, boom, 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 tat, boom, bop, right? 1E end on the foot, boom, 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 tat, boom, da. Then 1E end to 2. Now I've got 5 kicks, and so that fifth kick lands on beat 2. So you're getting a kick and a snare in unison. And so that's just a general exercise that I use, that I have in my second book. But one of the things, and this comes down to some bass drum technique, I find that people have to experiment a lot with seat height and different techniques. And one of the things, and this gets into the concept of, are we going to dig the beater into the head or let the beater come back? I'm all about letting that beater come back. Hit that, control the pedal, let that drum have some tone. Most drummers who come in and take lessons lean in. They're using their leg, their posture is going out because they're leaning in, and then so their head, the beater is on the drum head. Now you've got to hit a second hit. Well, now I've got to come back. They already missed the beat. So your hand, when you're hitting a drum, you release, right? You come right back, and now you're ready for the next hit, right? Well, I believe that it's the same thing with the foot technique too. So I know some players play where they like to dig the beater in and leave it there. So I'm not sure why they do that or how you get the result. It's just not my thing. So do you guys have any thoughts on that digging in and why one would want to do it?
Oh, well,
I don't want to do it. I don't think it does anything to help the sound of the drum. I think it's just ideally to just strike off the head and let that thing come straight off.
Yeah.
I think that has, that will help your foot speed a lot. It will, like you said, Chip and Rick, it'll allow the drum to breathe, and you want to hear the tonality of the drum. Like you said, Rick, you called it a release. I call it, the rebound. It's all about the up. It's all about the up. It's letting that stick come back at you. Well, I feel the same way with the bass drum pedal. The bass drum, I liken it to an old paddle ball. The ball comes up and hits the paddle and comes back. Well, I think about the bass drum head as the paddle and the beater as the ball, and it bounces back at you.
I like that, Bart.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then that also, Rick, you mentioned seat height and all that, man. That's I'm really big on that. You know, how high your seat is, how you're sitting. You have really good posture,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a point where both feet come off the ground at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have good balance. And then if you have a well-tuned drum and you have the bass drum pedal, your personal bass drum pedal tweaked in with the spring tension just right, you're going to be able to bounce that beater off the head, get a little bit more response out of the drum, out of the pedal. I mean, the springs are there for a reason. It's designed to go blah, 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 you know, so you want to
Right.
use that, you know, use that to your advantage. But yeah, I don't, you know, I think playing into the drum chokes it out a lot, you know. There's a
Yeah.
lot of guys that play that way. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, there's a lot of guys that play that way. It's just
I,
I would rather not.
what is that? That's
There's
your
my
bass.
kick walk. There's my kick walk. It's
Oh,
basically a
cool.
grid.
Does it go all the way to 16 constant 16ths? Boom, 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 boom,
Oh yeah,
boom.
right down there
Yeah,
at the bottom. Yeah.
very at the bottom. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will, you know, I do on a, I also teach beater coming back, and especially if you're working on speed, that's critical, right? Because every time you leave it in there, it takes an extra second to let it release and come back. So that's a killer if you're trying to
Right.
work on speed. But I do sometimes, you know, say to my students, you know, there are times when you hear drummers and see drummers leaving the beater in the drum or even leaving the stick in the head. Mike Clark, who we've had on our show, who's a famous jazz and funk guy, he talked about one of his clinics leaving the stick in the head and getting this really fat whack, you know, that's kind of choked at the end of the sound. And it's, you know, it's not like the traditional technique. It's not the way we're taught to play. There's good reasons, all sorts of good reasons not to do it, as we've just talked about. But it is just another sound, you know, and a sound by itself isn't good or bad, right? It's just a thing you can create on the drums. And so there are times when I'm leaning into a bass drum hit, like when I'm playing some jazz stuff, where I'll leave the beater in the drum when I'm trying to sort of really punch it and emphasize it. And I don't want the big, you know, sound of the natural resonant sound of the drum. So I want kind of a choked sound. So, you know, not a lot, but it comes up on occasion where I'll do that.
I could see that, especially like in a jazz context where you've got like a really big open sound and you want to just mute it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
after all, it's art, right? So
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anything goes.
Hey, I've got a related question for you guys. I know this is probably opening up a giant can of worms, but
That's what we do, man.
Right.
so I mean, I get this a lot too. You know, heel up versus
He cut out, but
you
he's
guys
heel up
always
heel up
use
or
a
heel
certain
down.
method.
He was going to say heel up versus
Heel up,
heel
heel
down.
up. Do you always teach a certain method, or do you say, oh, it depends on what you're trying to do, and you teach both, or what do you start with?
Heel up. I teach toe down no matter what I do. I just feel that that's the most ergonomical way to play the bass drum. So I kind of go with toe down no matter what.
Heel up, toe down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of teach to play with the toe as well, and more in a rocking motion, you know. So it's well, like in that page that Rick just showed, those 16th notes, the full 16th notes. You know, bouncing the beater off the head again, what I was saying. I mean, that's kind of got to be a heel up type of motion, and the motion comes from your ankle, from that, you know, the pivot or the fulcrum point of your ankle, if you will. And then, so yeah, it's a heel up and playing toe down, you know.
Do you ever teach heel down or
I
play heel
don't.
down? No.
I play heel down from time to time, depending on what I'm doing. And again, it's if it's necessary, but most of the time it's heel up. Most of the time for what I do. Yeah.
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 I would have to say it's very stylistic.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mhm.
my observation as a drummer is that if I have my heel up, I can get a little bit more punch on the kick, and I can get a louder hit and maybe a stronger attack. But if I leave my heel down, it's great for soft playing. You know, I
Right.
can't, you know, if you're
Mhm.
laying a light 4 on the floor kind of vibe, heel down just totally works. I don't need the power of my leg in it. So I
Right.
always think it's worth it to do both. And I think it's worth it to experiment with all the different kinds of kick drum techniques that are out there. Um, God knows the JoJo Mayer video,
Yeah.
secret weapons for foot is just a great resource.
And I've heard stories. I mean, and we talked about double bass. Where does double bass come from? Who started double bass? Quick.
Louis Belson.
There you go. So Louis, you know, we talked about double bass, and should I start it right away? I've heard stories that Louis would, lay on his stomach and hold the students' heels down underneath the drum throne, hold their heels down, because he's a big proponent of playing heels down. And first of all, I thought, well, how humbling is that? You hear you're one of the most legendary drummers in the world, and you're laying on your stomach holding a student's feet. That's Christ, man, that's pretty cool. But Louis was a big proponent of heel down. That's how he played, and he was the guy that started double bass, so.
Well, there's something to be said for building up those muscles.
Right.
And
do you feel that though? What do you guys feel when you play heel down? You're using your shin muscle a lot because you're lifting your foot. Much like you'll use the back of your arm will get tired if you're picking the stick up too much. I mean, don't you feel that? I mean, yeah, you got to build those muscles.
If you're playing heel down, you're missing out on all of those other muscle groups that you could be using if you play with your toe down.
I agree with that, Chip. I really do.
Well, it's just different muscles, right? Because if it's heel up, you're using more calf, and if it's heel down, you're using more shin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have a whole nother angle. If you have your toe down, you have this pivot going. You have just this, all you have is your ankle.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I'm for what it's worth. I teach both, and it sort of depends on style and how much power you want.
Yeah.
For me.
When I was studying with Zorro, we were working on a heel down development thing. And what he was suggesting I experiment with was putting a little bit of weight down on the heel. So it's heel down, pressure on my heel. And that gave me a pivot point to do a bunch of quick notes in a row. It's kind of like an arm wrestle, right? You couldn't arm wrestle up in the air, but when you have that pivot like that, where you got that balance, and it's an interesting thing. You guys, experiment with that.
And a lot of the pedal manufacturers, they're creating now on the higher end pedals adjustable heel plates, right?
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah,
you have a higher heel plate, so even if you're playing heel down, the angle of your foot is kind of more closer to a heel up traditional. So sort of a hybrid.
Oh, go ahead, Bart.
Oh, I was just going to say on your point, Rick, when I was studying with Ralph Humphrey, he did not a heel down thing, but it was the pivot point in the ankle. And then after you play the note, you drop your foot. So da-doom, and you just drop your foot. So if you're playing two notes, like you said 1 E, so ba-boom, 1 E, 1 E, ba-boom, right? On the E beat, you would drop your heel. And what that does is, it plays the note, but then your foot controls the pedal, so the pedal doesn't accidentally get a little wobble on the head or something like that, So, and it's like anything. It's like we're talking heel up or heel down, like you said, Jeremy. You're going to open a can of worms here, but you do kind of you learn to use those muscle groupings, and it takes a little bit of work, but I feel that it helps me that way. So
very cool.
There's so many cool techniques out there. Our brother Daniel Glass always talked about that. We've had hundreds and hundreds of years to work on holding sticks in our hands, but the drum set is only a couple hundred years old or a little more. And so that's like a new thing. So we're constantly exploring and trying to figure out all of these foot techniques, and there's a lot of them.
And that segues into my next question perfectly. Thank you, Rick. This was unrehearsed. Okay. One of my students wanted to know, okay, and this is an answer for all of us. And if our friend Kelly Ray Tubbs is watching, where did the drum set come from? Oh, now I know. Look, did you see the look? Did you see the look on Rick's face right there? He just he had a big juicy steak in front of his face. The second I said, he's like,
It came from Santa Claus.
It came.
That's where it came from.
There you go. We need a rim shot on that one, Rick. Come on. There you go. Oh man, hold on! Don't stop that. Oh, Jeremy, your background. This background
I'm
bird
trying,
thing
I'm
is
trying to show
killing.
it. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
I'm trying to show a book that I have that's really cool.
Okay, so Rick, go. Where did the drum set come from?
Okay, the
Where
drum
did it
set.
come from?
The drum set. Oh, that looks like a great book.
Kick It, A Social History of the Drum Set.
This has
I
got a
had
lot
to get rid of the
fucking-
background blur, dude. It was just killing me.
All right.
That was
I
killing me.
I will go. I'll try. Oh, I liked your background, Bart.
Oh, it was killing me, man. I
Oh,
was
I
killing
liked
me.
it. Okay, so this is one of my favorite subjects because I think it's just so fascinating, and I'll try to go quick. And a lot of this I learned from Daniel Glass. And if you don't know Daniel Glass as a drummer educator, buy all of his books. He put out a video, Century of Drumming Evolution. It's called the Century Project, and
Yeah.
he goes through A to Z the whole evolution of the drum set. So right after the Civil War, I'll try to go really, really quick on this, but it's a little long. Right after the Civil War, pop music was basically marching music, right? Picture your little band playing in the gazebo. One person on a bass drum with hands, one person on a snare drum. Somewhere around that time after the Civil War, some dude put the bass drum on the ground and hit it with a stick. And then he hit the snare drum, put that on a chair because we didn't have the snare stand. And he started boom, tick, boom, tick, boom, tick. One guy did the job of two. And so that was called double drumming. So that was kind of like the origin of the drum set. The drum set is an American instrument, and where it really evolved after that was during silent movies.
Mhm.
And basically you had at a silent movie, no sound, right? You had a pianist playing, and then you had a percussionist called a traps player, short for contraptions, right? All of the little instruments that they played for all of the sound effects were called the it's all these different contraptions. So it's all basically based on immigration, countries coming, people coming from all over the world into America and bringing their instruments, right? The China cymbals, right? Right. So in a silent movie, if there was maybe thunder and lightning, you'd hear a China cymbal, or wood blocks. If there was a horse, you'd hear a wood block. And so we had to emulate what was on the screen with a percussion instrument. Kelly Ray Tubbs is the biggest authority on all this stuff. And she could get into it deep. We should probably have her back. But really, that's how the drum set evolved. It was during the silent movies.
Rick, what if there was an aardvark?
Yeah, what if there was an aardvark in the movie?
This is a really fun thing that I like to do. I like to practice pretending and do this with my students. Like, what if there's something on a screen? How could you complement it? I call it like textural drumming.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have an aardvark, aardvarks, don't they have the rigid backs?
Yeah.
So if I had an aardvark, I'd probably grab a gyro and go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Right.
What about a giraffe? What would you do for a giraffe?
God, giraffes are long, tall necks. Giraffe is tough. He's not going to be low. Like, this would be a gorilla. That'd be a gorilla, right?
No, okay. What would you do if there was a chip?
This might be birds, like little light birds.
Yeah, I love this. I love this.
But
this
giraffe.
What would you do if there was a Chip Ritter in the room with you?
Chip Ritter. Oh man.
He can get a plate of nachos.
I think Chipmunk. I think like a Chip and Dale. There's a Chip.
Yeah, that's a Chip.
That's Chip.
That was a Chip. That was awesome.
Yeah. Giraffe is well, they're very African, so you might.
Yeah. I'm seeing giraffes on the savannah right now, dude.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, buddy. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Very cool.
All right.
Okay.
We're gonna give Rick like a really hard animal to make a sound to match. crap. Did I cut out?
Oh, you cut
You
out.
did.
You're giving me an animal to do again?
Damn it.
Yeah.
I said from now on, every week, we're going to give you a really hard animal that you have to make the sound to match.
Oh, that's
gosh,
great.
so fun.
Yeah.
You know
Okay.
what?
So
I've had
every week.
students come in. I've had students come in, you know, and they're like, "Man, this is my roughest week ever. Something really, really bad happened. I just need to release." And we'll do this lesson.
I
I'll
love it.
say,
I
I'll
love it.
say, I'll say, "Hey, man, okay,
That's awesome.
pretend up on the screen there's an ocean wave. Give me an ocean wave." You know, just do a simple roll, and suddenly you can just see them just decompressing.
I love it, Rick.
Yeah.
That's
Love it.
awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love that.
Very cool.
Might
Very
do this
cool.
in a deck clinic when we finally do our deck on the road clinics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Textural
so-
drumming is what I call it.
We're getting near the end of the show here, and we all decided. Jeremy decided. He goes, every week we ought to say something that's going on for each one of us individually, and what we got going on. This is our show, so we're promoting our stuff. So, Rick, since you're the guy that just made a sound of an aardvark and impressed the hell out of us, I didn't know aardvarks made sound, but you came up with an aardvark.
Well, they
A
do when you hit 'em.
gorilla. Yeah, right. You came up with an aardvark, a gorilla, and a chip ritter, and that's impressive as hell. So, what do you have going on in your neck of the woods in Rickville?
All right. Well, I've started actually finally recording drums on my own.
Cool.
And with the help of my awesome drum student, Rebecca Sykes, who's out there as, you know, in her 20s, making her living as a pro drummer. She's helping me with the technology. So thank you, Rebecca, out there. So I'm recording tracks for one of the members of my old band, Barnyard Ballers.
Oh,
And
cool,
they're
man.
really fast, ripping fast psychobilly. And it's just so great to be able to record in here. You know, he's sending me a click, bass guitar, and then guitar and vocal on one track for reference, and then he'll send me his drum machine track, and then I have to create the drum part from there. And
That's awesome.
it's so fun, and it's so much work, and so that's kind of the big thing. And then I'm still trying to finish up the volume 4 book.
Right on, man.
Yeah, and working on the streaming here. Trying to get the Zoom cameras working. So what about you guys? What are you guys up to?
Jeremy, what do you got going on, bud?
Man, my gig calendar is just chock full for the first time since COVID. So I've got a lot of projects that are up and running. Playing with this really great jazz piano player, Erica Oba, and her trio. Just loving that music. Just had a gig with Jennifer Jolly and friends. It's like kind of roots music from around the world. I got to play bass on a tune at the gig. That was fun.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
that was cool. Simple.
That's awesome.
Wow, fun.
I just booked a gig at the Monterey Jazz Festival in September with MoPhone, that's it, man. It's like playing at the San Francisco Jazz Center as part of the SF Jazz Festival in June with MoPhone with special guests. It's going to be a tribute to the Meters, the funk band from New Orleans. So we're going to do like a all Meters set. Yeah, and then
Wow.
It's going great. Teaching's packed full, and gigs are coming up all the time, and really, really things are good.
That's awesome, man. Chip, what about you, my friend?
Yeah, well, I'm halfway through the Formula One series on Netflix right now. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm so grateful that we've been anointed with this technology.
It's in there twice.
I'm doing good. I have a gig on April 30th with a saxophone player named Neiman Lyles. He's a signed artist on Sony, and he's got a lot of stuff going on. And I've been fortunate enough to be blessed with that. And I'm teaching throughout the week, playing on Sunday and Wednesdays at my church. And I'm working on my book, Stick Tricks and Showmanship by Chip Ritter.
Oh,
so
very
it's
cool.
a work in progress. And that's basically what's up with me, man. How about you, Bart?
Just kind of the same thing. It's nice to have gigs coming back. Sam Morrison Band, we've been working on an album forever, and it's finally coming out. We have The single, I think the single's up already. Sam put it up. It's out. I've got a new thing that I'm working on with my publisher in regards to the rudiments, and I'm writing a book. It's a book based on it's kind of influenced by the Nard book, and I'm entitling it "Etudes with Attitude," and so I'm putting that together, and that's a lot of fun. And then I know everybody says, "Well, you're a drummer," you know, the drummer has some songs too. I've been writing songs for years, and got my first solo album coming out this year. Got a great songwriting partner, and I have some really heavyweights playing on the record. The guy is supposed to be on here today. Dusty is going to play on a song. He's going to play drums on a song, and then also I just got a text just now. Stevie D, the guitar player from Buck Cherry, is played a solo, and he's also producing one of the songs, and he's working on that right now as we speak. I just got a video of the song that he sent me over to show me how it's going. So got a lot of stuff going on. Really excited about it, and it's kind of cool to have my own album coming out and not, doing it my way. And I'm really excited about that.
Right on,
So,
Bart. Congratulations,
Very
man.
cool.
thank you. Thank you.
Can't wait to
So
hear that.
I think that we're all just kind of doing our thing and doing a great job. And oh man, look at those.
I forgot to mention, I just got a Prologix endorsement.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Very cool,
Congratulations, man. Very cool. That's
Jeremy, do they have a
fantastic.
drum pad that has like little snares on the bottom so it sounds like a
No,
snare
they
drum?
don't. But they have ones that have rims on them, though.
Oh yeah, those are
That's
cool.
Oh.
Yeah, that's cool, man. How do those feel? Are those like a sponge rubber, or what are those, Jeremy? How do those feel?
They have different surfaces for different responses. So they got this blackout pad that's super soft. You can see I can kind of depress it down with my fingers. And then they've got sort of a little firmer, and then firmer again, and then firmer still. So like you can get various responses. It's hard rubber.
Man, that sounds great.
Yeah,
I like that rim. That's fantastic.
These are the best, man. I just love these pads. Highly recommend. Birch bass. So it's got a nice resonance to it, even on the table. And they got the small ones you can take in your stick bag for practice and stuff.
Very
My
cool.
hand be that good if I get that pad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask if I get one of those, will I be able to play that well? Right on. So, hey, in closing, once again, from everybody here on the deck, we want to send out our deepest condolences to Dusty and Ricky Watson, and on the passing of her father. Everybody that's watching, please keep them in your thoughts and your prayers. Dusty is, I know when you see the picture of him with his beard and everything, he is just the sweetest guy in the world and the salt of the earth, and he just is such a great dude, and his wife Ricky is fantastic. So please keep them in your thoughts and your prayers, and our condolences to them. We will get him back on once things have calmed down in their life a little bit. But in the meantime, from everybody here on deck, thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope this was an informative show for you guys. We'll see you next week when we have Ted Morton on. Ted's an amazing drummer, great guy, really good friend, and we'll be talking to Ted about everything he does.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
everybody. Thanks
See you
for tuning
guys.
in.
Have a great week.
Take care, guys.